Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to show you how to make 256 animations from 256 metahumans simultaneously. This is probably more of an intermediate tutorial, but hopefully you'll learn some concepts about arrays, blueprint interfaces, and spawning. Now, you may need quite a hefty GPU or CPU to run this. If you don't have one, we can try it with slightly less metahumans. And today we will be downloading the low quality metahuman, which in Unreal 5.5 promises to be more optimized. Now the first thing I'm going to do is go to Mixamo and download some animations. Getting 256 animations could be a little bit challenging. You could be sitting here downloading all day. So the likelihood is I can just download one animation first and ensure that it has with skin on there. The rest we're going to download without skin. And there's numerous ways you can do this. I'm not going to go into it too much, but I came across a JavaScript script that downloads all of them apparently if you launch the console. There is a video on how to do this, and if you get stuck, and also I'm going to give this a free plug now, if you want my project and some advice on how to do this, join my brand new Patreon. Now to do this, I pressed F12, pasted in my network ID, and then lo and behold, I am suddenly downloading every single Mixamo animation I can find. Now, this might cause some problems with your account. Be careful. Do this at your own risk. If you don't want 256 animations, you can certainly do this with less. So this part is not essential. What I ended up having to do was I ended up with lots of duplicates and I didn't know enough JavaScript to edit the script. So I ended up getting a Python script from ChatGPT to delete all the duplicates I had. But in the end, I had a couple of hundred Mixamo animations which are ready to go. And now to my metahumans. The metahuman configurator can be found on a web browser. And there's plenty of tutorials on how to get started in this. If you are going to make metahumans, please try to avoid making them look like mine, because most of mine tend to look like sex offenders, or even worse, people you really wouldn't want around your house for Sunday dinner. Nonetheless, I went in here and tweaked and made myself fatter and gave myself a moustache and stopped until I looked like something that you really wouldn't want around you. But that's cool, I can deal with that, and I quite like this look, and I might push it for a new video. Now the one thing you should be aware of is if you have existing metahumans, they will need to be in Unreal 5.5 format, and you can convert them in here when needed. Now onwards into Unreal, and you will need Unreal 5.5.1, and you will need to have some plugins installed, the Metahuman plugin and the Quixel Bridge plugin. Once that's done, I'm going to launch 5.5.1 and I'm going to go into Games and choose a blank. Now one thing I'm going to do here is just to search to make sure that Metahuman everything is on. And I'm going to turn on Metahuman New and just go yes and restart this. Next I'm going to go File New Level and create a basic here. And I'm going to save this level. And I'm going to get my content drawer up by pressing Control Space, and I am going to import my metahumans. Now, believe it or not, this is the bit which gave me the most hassle in this project. There's tutorials on how to do this, but it seems with Fab, this has got a bit more difficult, but I used Bridge, which you need to sign into. You might need to download a Bridge. It keeps telling you to update it, but there's not an update available for me. But anyhow, once you've done this, you should have the metahumans that you configured in the web editor in here ready to go. And what I want to do now is to bring some of these into my level. Some of these I've already downloaded from a previous project. We have the wonderful Hannah, Omar, KG, Natalia, and Christopher, all of which I wish were my friends in real life because I don't have very many. What I'm going to do is to just proceed to download these by pressing the green arrow, the ones that aren't here. And what I want to do here is to actually not do it like this, but to make sure that we have the low optimized metahuman selected. Download. This might take some time depending on your internet connection. Now the ones that have green ticks, I'm going to press the blue buttons to start to export them into my level. And I'll usually get this missing plugins error. I'm just going to click enable missing because I forgot about some plugins. And I'll just wait a moment for these guys and girls and theys to download before I restart. This one looks a bit like my ex-wife. This one my ex-girlfriend. This one, my friend Adrian. And this one, hopefully me in a couple of years. Now, whilst I'm waiting for this, I'm going to create a slightly larger area for my metahumans to boogie on. I'm just going to click the top view here and set my snap over to about 1,000 here and duplicate this floor a couple of times. Now I'm just going to create a quick folder here to organize things in. And while I'm waiting for the metahumans to download, I'm going to import those Mixamo animations. So let's have a new folder here. Call this one Mixamo, and then I'm going to go in here and import the first Mixamo animation first. And this skeleton should be blank, and it should, if done correctly, import its own skeleton when you're bringing that in. Don't worry about the smoothing group error. So this is the skeleton that we're going to use for all future animations. So I'm just going to go in here and right click and then import again. And this time I'm going to bring in the rest of the Mixamo animations. Let's see how many we can get in here. So I've arranged mine into folders, but again, you don't have to do this. You can have less, more, it's entirely up to you. So with these ones, they are going to be imported, and by default, they should use a defeated skeleton. This is the important part. When you bring these in, it should just bring in the movements. So is it looking good so far? If you want to, you can create further subfolders in here as well. You can just double click these to make sure that they're working okay. So I think I've got enough now, and my metahumans are finished. So I'm going to bring in the remaining metahumans. Just check that everyone's there now. If I got 16, I'll be happy. So with all that done, it's time to save everything and restart. And let's get coding. So the next thing we're going to do is to convert all our animations into metahuman animations. And I've got 261 animations, which is good enough for me. Okay, now to convert these all into metahuman, I'm going to select them all, right click, and click Retarget Animations. And for the targeted skeletal mesh here, I am probably going to search for a metahuman skeleton. And I'm going to use med medium normal weight body. And from here, I'll need to choose the animations that I want. I can filter this out to animation sequence. And I'm going to retarget everything, even if I've got a few duplicates in there. What I am going to do is to make sure that I put them in a new folder, call that retargets, and give it a prefix mh_. Cool, that should be that. Let's close our content browser and do a quick save. And let's spawn in a metahuman and make them play an animation. We're just going to create an actor, and we're going to call that BP_metahuman spawner. And we're also going to create a blueprint interface here, and I'll explain that to you later on in more detail. I'm going to call this BPI metahuman. Now onto some scripting, and what we're going to do is open BP metahuman spawner, and we're going to create a new variable here, and we're going to call it metahuman_spawn. And this type of variable is going to be a actor class reference, and it's going to be an array. We can compile that. I'm going to grab that in here, and we're going to do get a copy, which just gets one of the metahumans from this array, and then we are going to spawn actor from class from here. And for the transform, we'll just right click and split this and just keep this as 0 for now. Let's compile that. That seems to be okay. Now what we need to do is to populate this array with all the metahumans that we have in our scene. So what I'm just going to go and do here is they're all named BP_. I'm just going to start placing them into the scene here. There should be 16 of them. And so I have an array now of all my metahumans in there. And what I want to do is to spawn them with a spacing gap between them. So what I'm going to do is to change this transform every time I spawn this. And also I want to spawn everything that's in here. I want to do this 16 times. So I'm going to do a for loop. And it's going to run from 0 to 15 because the array starts at 0. Just straighten these. And every time I run this for loop, I'm going to spawn an actor. What I can actually do is connect this into this, so it will spawn them all one by one. And this will only work if you have the same number of metahumans in here as what you do there in your for loop. If we're going to spawn less metahumans here, obviously we want to make sure our array has the same number of elements. So what we're going to do is we're going to move these every time we spawn one. To do this, I'm going to split the location here, and I'm just going to move these back and turn both of these into variables by pulling off there and going promote to variable. And again, promote to variable. So we'll keep these at 0. Just compile that. And we're going to do another new variable, which is going to be a float, and we're going to call this distance. Not an array, a single. We're going to grab distance in here, and what we're going to do is every time we spawn this, we're going to add the distance to the location. We'll keep the distance at 500 for now. If I just compile that, I can enter a value. It's going to be 500. And I'm going to increment this. I'll just copy this across by pressing Ctrl D. And I'll pull from this and pull up a plus node to add these two together. Just reverse those. And then we'll set this once we've done that. So that should spawn 16 metahumans at a distance of 500 apart 16 times. Let's see if this works. And there we have our funky bunch of metahumans. So let's make a few changes. What we want to do next is to spawn another 16 in front of those metahumans. So we basically have 16 by 16, that's 256. So we're just going to copy this and just do a Control D. And this is going to be a for loop nested within a for loop for those of you that have come from programming. So what I aim to do is to, once I've spawned all the 16 in the X location, I want to start spawning them in the Y location. So I'm just going to grab this Y location, pull this down here, and when this has finished, I'm going to do the same with this. So I'm going to copy this, paste that, add these together, and I'm going to increment this Y location 500 as well. Turn that to set and assign that, so that when this is complete, the Y's can start to transform, can start to spawn 500 units in front. So one thing I'll have to do is to set this back to 0 again. Sorry, I'm going to duplicate that one, so as they all don't spawn in a sort of zigzag pattern. So I'll connect this in here and see if this works. Now, if you are using 256 metahumans, your computer may start to chug at this point. Mine is still okay because of the quality of the LODs in these metahumans. And I might change that because damn, I look ugly. And the other problem we have here is it's spawning them exactly the same. So what I can actually do, I'm just going to stop that. I can shuffle the array after I've done the first bunch of spawns. So I'm just going to pull this into shuffle. Now you might want to use a stream for this because shuffle doesn't always shuffle properly. Same as random in Unreal, you'll start to discover these things. But I will shuffle them at the end of that. And hopefully this should give us a variation in pattern. Let's press play. And that's not looking too bad. There seems to be a bit more variation going on there. Still some repetition, but that's to be expected. Now the other thing you can do here is you can actually have a Y distance and an X distance. So I'm going to rename this to X distance and make a duplicate of this. Call this Y distance, and we can also randomize these values if we want to as well. So let me bring the Y distance there. What we can do is to just randomize this. So let's get random float, and again you can use stream if you want to. I'm going to do random float in range actually, and maybe do from 300 to 600. And here actually we can remove this variable and just put that in there. And do the same for here. Let's see how that looks. Let's variate them a little bit. You can actually do this with rotations and stuff as well if you want to. Still looking a bit too close, but that's a bit better than having them all in a pattern. You can play around with random and more rotations to get something a bit more interesting here if you wish. So let's get playing some animations. The way we're going to do this is to have a blueprint interface assigned to each of these metahumans. Now there is a little bit of repetition here, and I'm not entirely sure how I can make all of these guys implement an interface one by one, or automatically, sorry. Perhaps some Python scripting in the editor. I'm not sure, so if anyone knows, hit me up in the comments. But what I'm going to do is assign an interface here and just put some functions in there. So what I'll do first is go into my blueprint interface that I made earlier, BPI metahuman, add a function here called play animation, and compile that. And what we're going to do is just have an input here, and here we're going to set this to animation asset object reference. And we're going to call this animation here. So we can close this, and I'm going to now implement a function in these blueprints and in these metahuman blueprints. And I'm also going to assign a blueprint interface. I'll show you how to do it on one, and then you can replicate it on the others. So here under class settings, inherited interfaces, I want to make sure that my BPI metahuman is implemented. And once I've done that, I should have something here called play animation, and I can right click and implement event. And this unfortunately is going to have to be replicated across these metahumans. There may be other ways to do this with blueprint components and so forth, and parenting blueprints from one another, but for the sake of this tutorial, that's what I'm going to do. So just copy this across all of your metahumans. You can copy and paste the nodes if you need to. I'm just going to pull from there and do play animation body. And I'm going to set that to looping. What I'm going to do is just copy and paste them across all the other blueprint metahumans. So what I'm going to do here is just move some of this up, some of this down. What I want to do is just disconnect this, highlight these nodes and move them away so I can move the location after the spawn. What I want to do is just pull from does implement interface here to check that the metahumans are being spawned or using that interface. From here I can pull a branch, and this is equivalent of an if statement for the programmers out there. And for the interface I need to choose that interface from earlier, BPI metahuman. And then what I can do from here now is I can pull that play animation message, that function that's in the interface. Connect these here. What remains now is to build an array of animations here. I could do that from here, and I can call this animation. And this has to be a type animation asset object reference, and it needs to be an array. and drag that in and then compile. I want to add some animations to this array now. And the way I'm going to do this is to go into the content browser and go to my retargets folder here and quite literally choose every one of these. And drag them in here. I actually have 287. And because they're in order of name, I've got a lot here, all the boxing ones are together. I want to give this a bit of a shuffle, so I can do that right at the beginning. I'm just going to copy this node, push that in here and just do a shuffle. And from here, I'm going to get a copy. So this will play the animation at that position. And I'm going to start this at 0 and just sequence through these. So I'm going to promote this to a variable as well and call this iteration. And I'm simply going to increment this each time. To do that, I pull from this and do a plus plus. So what this is going to do is it's literally just going to keep taking this number up every time that loop within a loop is ran. If I want, just to be neat at the end of this, once everything is completed, from here I can set this to 0 if I want. If I want to run this again. Let's give this a play now and see what happens. I now have all my metahumans playing a different Mixamo animation. Hey handsome. Well, hello you. So there you have it. I can elaborate on this if there's any interest and start to show you how to stop them and do some other cooler stuff with this and make the whole process a little bit more automated in future videos. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching. See you next time.